Hello and welcome to part 2 of this DevTools course. In the first part we had a very introductory look at the DevTools, and in the second part we're going to take a look at the Elements panel. So typically to get to the Elements panel you've most likely right-clicked and inspect element. To start out with, let's just have a quick look at the layout. On the left you've got the DOM tree view, and on the right you've got a bunch of panes. Remember, it's not just styles that you can look at, there are a number of different panes for different use cases. But we'll just have a look at the DOM tree view for now. What this is showing you is the current state of your DOM. This is live, and by live I mean we can select some text, we can edit it, hit enter, and that will apply itself to the DOM in real time, and you'll see the update immediately. You can also move around nodes, so you can simply click and drag, and just like that you get a live preview for what that element would look like were it actually there, which is quite convenient. There we go. Let's talk about navigating the DOM. Let's say I'm at this div ID main and I simply want to get to footer. Well, I can use the down arrow key and I get to footer. I'm going to go back up. Let's say I want to go deeper and deeper. Right? To do that, I can use the right arrow key. And if I just carry on pressing the right arrow key, it will essentially select child nodes of the currently selected node and continue that way. Likewise, if you select the left arrow key, that will collapse the nodes back again. So you can totally navigate this DOM structure using just the arrow keys. Editing HTML, right click and choose edit as HTML, and just like that, you can do so. You can actually edit this. And again, just like you'd expect, changes are applied in real time. If you so prefer, you can select just the node that you're interested in and edit that as HTML. It's really up to you. When you are able to edit things as HTML, that's pretty powerful, but DevTools does offer a few utility features, such as editing attributes. So for example, let's say I want to edit this source attribute. I can double click, and just like that, it's selected source. But attributes and attribute values are different things. So if I want to edit an attribute value, likewise, I just double click on the value itself, and it will highlight and it's ready to go, ready to edit. You can very easily add attributes by right-clicking and selecting Add Attribute, and you can begin to type in something new here. Deleting nodes is fairly straightforward and intuitive. You right-click and select Delete Node. You can also simply select the delete key on your keyboard. We've had a look at how to edit the DOM. What else can we do? We can extract useful information. Let's say we want to get the CSS selector of a node. Well, previously, we had copy as XPath, which has been around for a while. A recent feature of the DevTools is actually to copy a CSS path, which is very useful. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to the console. Going to the console is not significant. I just want to show you some text. And if I paste that, as you can see, DevTools has put that into our clipboard. One thing to keep in mind is the selectors that DevTools will generate aren't always the most efficient. Not to say they will be inefficient, it's just keep in mind the logic will be slightly different to what you might use if you're writing a selector manually. You can also copy entire DOM structures as HTML. So again, back to the console just to show you some text. And we've got a nicely indented section of HTML directly corresponding to the parent node of which we copied. This will happily go in your code editor. In Sublime you can use Command-Shift-V to make sure the indentation is correct. I think we've covered, the important things of the DOM tree view. Again, it's fairly straightforward. You've also got this little breadcrumb trail right at the bottom. Again, it's fairly straightforward as to what it does. The deeper you go down, it will show you the trail which you took to get there. You can hover over these nodes. Like many things in the DevTools, this is all interactive. You can click on these nodes to go back to them so you don't kind of lose your way, so to speak. Yeah, I think that's it for the DOM tree view. We'll come back at that later. The styles pane is just one of the many panes in this right-hand section, and notice that I've resized this because we're talking about it. I want to give more prominence to that, so I do recommend you do that in your workflow as well. In the styles pane, many things are editable, but before we talk about what's editable and what's not, let's have a look at exactly what we can see. We've got a style rule. This is the section that's currently highlighted. On top of the style rule, we've got the file which it's contained within and the line number where it begins. Now again, earlier I was saying many things in the DevTools are interactive. You can single click on any of these sections. So if I single click the selector, I now have the ability to change the selector. Likewise, I can change this property. I can change this property value. This is one of the most common use cases that I have witnessed. It's inspecting an element it's finding the value and then tweaking it. Tweaking to see what it looks like. Now while I'm here, I want to show you a cool little trick. We can use the up and down arrow keys to increment and decrement by 1. M's are the perfect use case because you don't want to go from 2 to 3. You want small increments. So to do that, we can do Alt and up, and that will increment by 0.1 or decrement. And we can also use Shift and up. That will increment by 10. If I remove that value, you'll find that we get a bunch of autocomplete suggestions. So autocomplete in the DevTools is a thing. It's very useful. You get the same for properties. So I'm going to make a new property by clicking basically at the end of the last property. That will insert a new property for me. And if I just start typing, D, for example, you get a few suggestions. I'll select display and I'll select it by pressing tab, and that will automatically take me to the property value. Now, what's nice about where I am right now is it's realized what property I'm interested in, and it's providing me with valid CSS values for that property. So this is incredibly convenient. One thing you should keep in mind is that this is not exhaustive. I can't comment for this property in particular, but what you'll find with many of the properties, you don't get every single value. If you find that it's missing something critical, then feel free to raise a bug. I'm sure the Chrome team will be happy to fix it. That's something to keep in mind. Units are quite easy to edit. We've already had a look at how we can edit these sort of numerical units using shortcuts. Colors are fairly convenient because you can simply click on the color and you get this little color picker tool, which is super nice. On top of that, if I shift click on the square, I can view different formats of the color like HSL, hex, and RGB. Moving away from the style rules, let's take a look at this little plus button. What this will do is create a new selector based on the currently selected node. Here I selected a div with an ID of more details, and unsurprisingly, let's put that in the selector. Definitely makes sense. Triggering of pseudo classes. So let's take a look at something which changes its state based on hovering. These are perfect examples. If I hover over this row, it changes color. Now I want to find out that color. How do I do that? Well, I click here. With this node selected, I select hover. It's now triggered a hover state, and as you can see, the star rule has just suddenly appeared, and I can go ahead and edit that, and that will apply. Okay, maybe I didn't use the best color. You can see that's quite handy. Alright, so far we've looked at the DOM tree view, we've looked at editing the DOM, the breadcrumb trail, the styles pane, how you can add styles, edit styles, remove them if needed. If you just remove that property, also remove the value. And, oh, don't forget, you can also copy this entire star rule, and that will just work. You can put that into your code editor, Command-Shift-V and Sublime to maintain the indentation level. But I think that's it for the styles pane. We'll take a look at a few others. Computed. So this is really nice. This little, what I like to think of as a visual representation of the box model. Now, if you are learning about the box model, this is great. I don't use this too much, but again, it is very handy. Let me find something with a bit of padding. Here we go. Okay, or margin rather. These are all editable, which is super cool. I only found that out not too long ago. And what's nice is if you find something is a bit bigger than you expected, this is like the perfect place because you can find out, oh, is margin or is padding affecting the overall dimensions of this element. Event listeners. Event listeners are very powerful. Before I show you, let me find an element which will react based on some JavaScript. Okay, this. When I type in here, let me make this a bit smaller so you can see. When I begin to type in, let's try box, you can see that the list updates in real time. So it's fair to say that JavaScript is handling this for us, and if we select the DOM node in question, the input text box, indeed we can go to the event listeners tab and find out exactly what events are registered on that element. So the top level item is the event itself. Then you get the event handlers. I guess the parts that you want to pay attention to, or that are most likely going to be useful to you, is the line number, the file where it's actually occurring, the event name, and the function itself. You might be asking, well, how would you be aware of the function? Well, you can hover over it and see the source, which is really useful. You can, even better, you can right click and go to show function definition. So this is super convenient. It's really great. I know there's an extension, Chrome extension, which does something similar. It'll show you registered event listeners on various elements on your page. this is very similar. Oh, one thing I would add, do keep in mind that I'm currently using an incognito window. I do suggest you do the same. If you have a bunch of Chrome extensions, like I do, they can very well attach event listeners to your DOM. So what will happen is you'll select one, and you'll see a bunch of events here, and you won't know exactly what's from your own source code and what's from, this external script. It's basically because extensions won't run in incognito windows unless you instruct them to. And scroll into view is pretty useful. If I select something right at the bottom, okay. So I'm at the top of the page now, and I've got the footer which is selected. Just by hovering over it, you get a little tooltip in the viewport which shows the general direction of the element, because DevTools knows that it's not in your viewport and it's trying to be helpful. Even better, right-click, scroll into view. It will take you straight to the element, which is very useful. Okay, well, that's it for now. Thank you for watching.